Yesterday, we configured Windows Firewall to allow connections to PostgreSQL from other servers. Today, let's finish up and configure PostgreSQL's host-based authentication rule to also allow connections from other servers. Let's get started. So what is this host-based authentication thing? Well, it's kind of like PostgreSQL's firewall or security rules console. You know how in Qlik Sense we have this security rule section in QMC that we can use to specify who has access to what? Well, PostgreSQL has its own version of this, but it's way simpler. It's essentially just a text file that we can use to specify who is allowed to connect, from where, to which database, and using which authentication method. Let's take a look at this text file. If your Qlik Sense server is using a bundled installation of PostgreSQL, you can find the HBA file in ProgramData, Qlik Sense repository, PostgreSQL, and then the version number folder. This PG HBA file is the file that holds PostgreSQL's host-based authentication or security rules. Now, if you're using a standalone installation of PostgreSQL, the default location will be in Program Files, PostgreSQL, the version number folder, and then this data folder. Here's the PG-HBA file for a standalone PostgreSQL server. Go ahead and open it. In here, typically all the way at the bottom, we will need to enter the information of the server that we would like to allow to connect to this PostgreSQL server, just like we did with Windows Firewall. So if this PG-HBA file is on your test or QA server and you're working on allowing your prod server to connect to it, you would need to enter the information of your prod server in this file. In my case, this is my dev server, and I'm working on allowing my prod server to connect to it. So let's create an HBA rule. Go ahead and duplicate this rule for the local IP address in this IPv4 local connections section. Then replace this 127.0.0.1 IP address with the IP address of the machine that you want to allow to connect to your PostgreSQL server. Again, in my case, I want to allow my prod server to connect to this PostgreSQL server, so I'll enter my prod server's IP address here. It's the same IP address that we've entered in the firewall rule yesterday. Now, with this rule added, PostgreSQL will allow connections to all databases for all database users from a server with this IP address. The method property at high level tells PostgreSQL that whoever is trying to connect from this machine must log in with a username and a password. I recommend using whatever method value other rules in your file are using. The value I don't recommend using is trust. Using trust method means that PostgreSQL will allow connections or access to all databases for all users from this machine without a user needing to provide a username and password. The trust method will essentially leave your PostgreSQL server wide open. Again, I don't recommend using it. Okay, so now that we have this new rule added, let's go ahead and save the file and then go to PostgreSQL configuration file to configure one last thing. In the same location as the PG-HBA file, you'll see this PostgreSQL.conf file. Go ahead and open it and search for the listen underscore addresses setting. When you find it, make sure that it's set to either an asterisk like this, or that it includes your server's name or IP address, like this. For context, the listen addresses setting defines where PostgreSQL accepts connections, not who is allowed in. It's a bit confusing, so let's make sense out of it. The default value for listen addresses setting is localhost, which means that PostgreSQL will only listen to requests from within the same server where PostgreSQL is installed. For example, if Qlik Sense and PostgreSQL are installed on the same server with the listen addresses set to localhost, PostgreSQL will listen for and respond to requests coming from Qlik Sense. But since we're working on allowing remote connections, those remote connections will be coming through an Ethernet cable that's connected to your server's network card. The network card has an IP address and a name. If you want your PostgreSQL server to listen for remote requests coming through the network card, you will need to tell PostgreSQL to listen for those requests. And we do that by setting the listen addresses to include the IP address or the name of your server where PostgreSQL is installed. Or you could just set it to asterisk, and that will effectively tell PostgreSQL to listen for both internal and external requests. I prefer setting listen addresses to asterisk. It makes recovery process a bit easier. Okay, so with all that said, let's go ahead and save this file. And by the way, if you've made the change to the listen addresses setting, you will need to restart the repository database service in order for PostgreSQL to recognize the change. Go ahead and do that now if you need to. Okay, so with the firewall and HBA rules created and listen addresses setting configured, let's try creating a data connection to the server and make sure that it works. I'll jump back to my user PC and go to the hub of my prod server. Let's open up an app and go to the data load editor. Now, once the data connections load, click the create new connection button and scroll down and select the PostgreSQL. And for the host name, enter the name of the server where your PostgreSQL is installed. In my case, I'll enter the name of my dev server. For port number, go ahead and enter the port number that your PostgreSQL server is listening on. Then in the database input box, enter the name of the database that you'd like to connect to. I'll try connecting to the QSR database. And lastly, let's enter the username and password of the database user that has access to PostgreSQL server that you're trying to connect to. I'll use the default Postgres account and enter the password for the Postgres account. Okay, and now the moment of truth. Let's click the test connection to confirm that all is good, and it is. All right, that was a lot, but it's all done now. As a review, we've learned that there are 2 layers of security that we need to configure to allow remote connections to PostgreSQL server. We learned which firewall rule to create, how to create a firewall rule, what is PostgreSQL's HBA rule, and how to create one, what listen addresses setting means, and what to populate it with. Now that you know all of that, you can repeat these steps to enable all your servers communicating with each other freely. Okay, that's all for today, and I'll see you in the next video.